let's bring it closer to home, and as it relates to this president. Of course, the Congress, we've had both sides of the aisle weighing in and not liking this deal, and they're threatening to go ahead with further sanctions on Iran. Let's put aside what that means for the treaty, but what does that mean for the president? I mean, he's got the people now not trusting him. He's got, Obamacare out there. Many said this was a distraction. We'll get to Obamacare in a second. Of course, they took over the Senate, the Democrats did. But here you have a president now who, is tanking in the polls, and even his own party in the Senate and the Congress is saying this deal stunk.
Well, any second-term president, two things are true. One is they struggle to keep their poll numbers up to the extent people perceive them as a lame duck. And the other is they often turn to international relations, national security to try to get things done because of their diminished influence with the Congress. This president has had an extraordinarily rough political year. John Hammond and I in Double Down make pretty clear part of the reason for that is he didn't run with a very specific second-term agenda. He just ran to annihilate Mitt Romney. And he alienated a lot of people, not just in the Republican Party, but a lot of Democrats in Congress. It's going to be harder and harder for the president to even keep Democrats in line on this deal, on health care, on other things as the midterms approach, because I think the Democrats don't trust that the president has their political interests, their political future at heart, and that's going to make it tough for him to get things done, even in the foreign policy realm in areas like this, where Democrats and Republicans feel so strongly about the issue of Israel and Iran, and where they do have some tools at their disposal, such as passing additional sanctions.
We're talking to Mark Halperin, senior political analyst for Time Magazine and for MSNBC here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Of course, he is the author of Double Down, Game Change 2012 bestseller, along with John Hammond, who we referred to there. Let me ask you this. Did the media know, do you think, did you know that President Obama was lying through his teeth for 3 years when he said, if you like it, you could keep it?
I group myself into the statement I'm about to make. I think it's clear that at the time of the passage of the Affordable Care Act and in the context of the presidential campaign, the press did nothing like an adequate job in fly-specking and scrutinizing the whole law, not just the provisions that have already become controversial and about which the president was misleading in the context of a campaign and government, but other aspects of the law to come. And I would hope that as we chronicle what's going on now with the political controversy over the law and scrutiny of the president's past statements on some issues, that we all learn the lesson from that and recognize any government program, but certainly one of this size and this grandeur, is incumbent upon the press to do a lot of scrutiny so the public can make an informed decision. Part of the issue, I've said this elsewhere and received some criticism about it, part of the issue was Governor Romney didn't make health care a big issue in the campaign because he had his own political problems. And so often in the context of a campaign, what gets scrutinized is what one side or the other puts forward. But there's no doubt that even without Governor Romney putting health care front and center, the press should have done a much better job. And that would have been in the president's interest, really, and in liberals' interest, because a law that has no scrutiny in real time is not going to get corrected, and now they're dealing with the scrutiny that's coming belatedly, and it's really setting back their attempts to make the law a practical reality.
But I don't get it, because I mean, with all due respect to you and the rest of the press, and I admire you for putting yourself in that mix. I think the last question I asked you in the last interview had to do with Obama's admitted drug use, and you said something to the effect if McCain had made an issue of it, the press would have gone along. I mean, you can't convince me that he did drugs when he was in the reserve, and he was AWOL. I mean, all these things that they dig, and here you had a law that not one Republican voted for, and the media didn't think it necessary to find out what the heck was in it. And I just don't get that. You can't tell me it's not because Obama was a Democrat, and possibly on top of it an African American Democrat. Did that play a role?
Well, I've been outspoken for my career in saying that there's liberal bias in the media, and it's a big problem, and it remains a big problem. So I certainly think that played a role in some of the things you're talking about. I thought the coverage the president got in 2008 was the most favorable coverage of any presidential candidate I've ever covered, and I think his party played a role in that, as well as the historical nature of his election. I will say, though, Steve, that I did not see, and nor do I recall, massive amounts of investigative reporting by conservative news organizations about the provisions in the law that are now controversial. There was rhetorical questioning of some of the provisions, including the ones that have become controversial, but they were mostly cast as bad policy and some skepticism that they would work well. But I think there's enough conservative news outlets now that I think it is not right to exempt conservative news organizations or news organizations that are perceived to be conservative or as watchdogs of the Democratic administration. I didn't see a lot of work by those groups. In addition, for many of the same reasons, not about bias, but simply about resources and judgment about what was important.
All right. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people said that you weren't going to be able to keep your health care, but also I think they focused on the death panels, which will be coming. Call them what you will. Rationing is part of it, and I
agree. It's huge. It's going to be a huge issue, and that's something else about which the president was not fully forthcoming and straightforward.
All right, so you believe that there will be rationing, aka death panels?
It's built into the plan. It's not like a guess or like a judgment. That's going to be part of how costs are controlled.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
but I'll say something else about that issue, which is we do need to do some of that in this country because we can't afford to spend so much on end-of-life care. A very high percentage of our health care spending is for a very small number of people at the last stages of their life. I'm not saying the system shouldn't allow that, but there's too much cost there. Judgments have to be made. We have the society.
Made by who, Mark? Mark, made by who? The government?
By individuals.
But it's not going to be made by individuals. If you say it's included in the health care.
But it's not now. It's not now for many people who have insurance. Their insurance companies make those decisions.
But it's very rare that they. In other words, if someone needs a bypass, the insurance company doesn't say put him in a hospice or give him a pill like Tom Daschle told me that he would do. I mean,
sometimes people run up against caps and costs with their insurance that make it impractical to get certain kind of coverage. But don't draw me into a false argument here about what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, as a society, we need to have this discussion in an honest and straightforward way because we can't afford every instance that people would like to have.
And has the president been forthcoming that we need to have that argument?
No, he was not, and Democrats were not when the law passed. But I'll say again, there should have been more scrutiny by all the press, including the conservative press, of the specifics of this. I'm not saying there was none, but there's going to be a lot of journalism done across the board on this issue coming up, just as there has been now on the issue of whether people with individual plans could keep them. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny. It should start now. It should have started a while ago, but it needs to start now in a serious and substantive way with investigative reporting and explanatory journalism rather than waiting until the crisis is upon us, because the law is the law, and we're going to have a discussion as a country about what kind of health care we can afford, particularly at the end of life, when a lot of expensive medicine is often done, that as a society we'll have to decide, do we really want to spend that money?
All right, I got you.
Just so there's no misunderstanding, this report is an editorial. The healthcare law that is incrementally injecting itself on citizens of the United States will affect everyone from young to old. Come 2014, the pain inflicted by it will grow. As we learn more about the Affordable Health Care Law, which most people call Obamacare, the less most of us like it. We have already found that it is unaffordable, and we are beginning to understand that it is also unhealthy. We believe that this diabolical legislation is about more than health care. It's about control. As proof, consider the following reported by a church member where this writer attends. We'll call the 75-year-old lady Susan, not her real name. Susan fell and damaged her rotator cuff. Upon going to her physician, she was told that since she is 75, Medicare will not pay for x-rays, and it would not provide coverage for related procedures needed resulting from the injury. Therefore, not being able to pay on her own, Susan had to forego medical treatment. She also saw her doctor to arrange an annual mammogram. She was told Medicare will pay for the exam, and that if a lump was detected, it would pay for a portion of a lumpectomy, surgical removal of the lump. However, Medicare will not pay for a mastectomy or follow-up treatment should that be required. So, if the mammogram showed that Susan had a lump and it was cancerous, she would be left with two options: pay for the needed surgery and medication out of her pocket, or wait to die. This is, it would appear, the beginning of the current health care law's non-provisions for extending the lives of older citizens. It takes away the physician-patient prerogative as to how the patient's medical needs will be met. For those who support the president's plan, we point out that everyone will be affected. Republicans, independents, and Democrats in all age groups will be subjected to the rules. Many young people seem to favor Obamacare. May we point out that while some of the provisions could be beneficial to you personally, it is your parents and grandparents who will essentially be told that the plug has been pulled and they are going to die. With that in mind, is Obamacare really all that good? Do you really want to see your parents and grandparents treated as throwaway humans? Here's another consideration. Treating your parents and grandparents as the health care law does is not biblical. Paul wrote, quote, "Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth." Close quote. That's from Ephesians chapter 6, verses 2 and 3. Consigning the elderly to death because it is economically feasible flies in the face of the Word of God.